Hey everybody, and welcome to my Black Mage Controller guide. This guide is set up for level 70, but really it ends up being pretty flexible for any level range, pretty much plus 50. There's a lot of abilities that obviously you can't use, but based off the placements of them, it doesn't seem necessarily that inconvenient, and actually at the end of the day, very, very useful. So this guide we're going to talk about three typical things. We're going to talk about my layout that you see right here. We're going to talk about the controller layout and where the skills are placed and what hotbars are where. And then we're going to talk about settings and how all this is configured. Now, a number of questions usually pop up that are very common on the controller guides, usually referencing the top hotbar here, which for PS4 players and basically controller players, you're not going to access via anything. This is just how you put cooldowns to communicate that information to you, and I'm going to show you that as well towards the end of this video if you are interested. Now, as a part of that, there are controller guides that are specifically talking about how to use the controller for various things like zooming in, zooming out, locking on targets, things like that. I'll be sure to include the links in the description below of this video in case you have any additional questions. Hopefully this video or those videos will help really build you a great familiar nature with the controller itself. I think it's a very powerful tool that Final Fantasy has. One of the great strengths of the game being able to be used for both keyboard and mouse and controller. But without further ado, let's go ahead and just do this thing. Okay, so first to get into your HUD layout, you go to System, HUD Layout, and this is going to be the tool and control that you're going to use most of all. This has been updated with patch 4.1, so there's a lot more power just in this control itself. But let's go ahead and talk about the layout, and then we'll talk about the various settings and how I use them. So first, you see my elemental gauge. It's listed right here, and I'm actually using the simplified elemental gauge. You can control that by the little gear symbol right here on the element. You can set its size, which I set it to 200%. And you can see that obviously I'm using simple. The more complex one is this bigger gauge. If you like it, stick with what you like. I like the simplified one. It keeps it very simple, obviously. And with that, I can easily see everything that's going on and where I am in my rotation and with my cooldowns. Then I've got, I'll move this up here. I got my status info enfeeblements and status info enhancements, so I can see the debuffs that I have on myself as well as the buffs, and they kind of flesh up or line up right with the elemental gauge. So I'm going to see that information on this half of the screen. Here I have hotbar 3, and I've got this to where it's in display. So you have it to where it's turned on, and I have it as a 12:1. This is where I put down all my cooldowns, and again, we'll talk about how you set those with a controller if you don't have access to a keyboard and mouse at the end of this video. Here I have my left cross hotbar, and then here I have my right cross hotbar. They're a little bit offset. You can set it any which way you want, but this is just kind of a preference of mine. The general cross hotbar itself, my parameter bar, and in this case I'm not actually using hotbar 2, but you can play around with that as you like. That is essentially where I have my skills and the information that I want to communicate to me. Over here I've got my enemy list, my focus target bar, and my progress bar, so for casting spells, etc. The focus target bar is really important because if you focus a target, it's going to stay up there all the time, regardless if you have to switch targets. So things like a boss are really good. You can kind of see if he's charging up to do anything. The enemy list is really good to have here, just so I can easily see what all I've got aggro on, whether it's full aggro if I've ripped it from the tank, or if it's partial aggro, where I can kind of see that and kind of make adjustments accordingly. With the controller, you can actually cycle through any target in your enemy list by holding down the left bumper or L1 button and then pressing up and down on the D-pad. So you actually can just self-filter through here as well with the controller itself. Now, a few notes here. Hotbar 4 and 5 I actually have turned on. As I'm learning and trying to get a better gauge at my opener and various rotations for the Black Mage, I try to give myself a couple key points. So hotbar 4 and 5 is essentially the Blizzard opener, Blizzard 3 opener, that is, as a part of a rotation for the Black Mage. And this is just as a key to help me try to remember as I'm learning. Now, eventually when you get it down, it becomes muscle memory. You won't need something like this, but for any DPS that you're playing, anything out there where you're trying to remember any number of skills in a particular order, if you've got the screen space, give yourself a kind of a key guide just to help you learn that as well. Then let's see here. Then up here at the target bar, and then I have my experience bar at the top. Not necessarily important on the experience, but the target bar is important as well. So this kind of gives this kind of box, this kill box, if you will. So you have a lot of space, a lot of things to work with from that perspective. And that is the HUD layout. There's, your HUD layout should be personal. It should really kind of speak to you. So don't feel like you have to use this one specifically. If you're struggling with trying to where and what you want to place on the screen, and use this as a starting guide, but really kind of try to make it your own, because if you're used to where something's supposed to be, that's going to be the best. Muscle memory is key. And the same thing applies to your skills layout bar. So up here at the top, like I said, this is my cooldowns communicator. This is where I can see abilities that I want to make sure that I'm not forgetting about and that I'm using actively for that perspective. So I have Mana Ward, Foul, Blizzard 4, Enochian, Triple Cast, Sharp Cast, Ley Lines, Fire 4, and Convert. So this, the reason I have Fire 4 and Blizzard 4 here is that when I'm in Enochian, these will be lit up and active. So it's more just a passive way to continue to communicate to my brain, hey, you are not in Enochian, make sure you're in Enochian. Now you'll also see that here communicated as a part of the hotbar, but as far as it goes, just kind of make this your own. Again, so triple cast, sharp cast, ley lines. These typically have 60 to 90 second cooldown. So if they're off cooldown, I'm immediately aware that I can use them as a part of my rotation from that perspective. Now on the double cross hotbar left, I have a cross roll ability, Addle, Lucid Dreaming, and Mana Shift. This is pretty much my cross roll abilities here, and then I have an Ether Potion, so that way I can restore some MP to myself if I mess up in any of my rotations. A Black Mage is so heavily dependent on its MP, and it has infinite amounts of it. You'll never run out of MP as long as you have and you're working your rotation correctly, but sometimes you can be human. It's okay, and this is a great way for me to recover that, at least from that ability if necessary. If you have no problems with that, maybe put in a potion of intelligence here to help increase your damage. Whatever, all of these four things are really going to be up to you. These are just based off of your choice for cross roll, and this is your choice for potion. Left hand side, you can see a theme here, lots of ice. So starting here on the left hand side, we've got freeze this, which is just a macro freeze with the target indicator. So if I go into the macros section and I go find freeze, you can see that it is trying to do freeze, and then if it can't, if I don't have a target selected, then it will do the ground targeting as well. So it looks to see, hey, you've already got this targeted for this area, and if not, then it's going to use the regular command, thus allowing me to do the ground target placement as well. Thunder 3, essentially this is a Thunder set spell that gets upgraded over time, so your regular Thunder ability, and Thunder 2, which then is upgraded automatically to Thunder 4. So single target Thunder, AoE target Thunder, and Sharp Cast. Sharp Cast being a great forcing of any kind of a proc for your abilities, and grouped over here to make sure that Thunder is procced as a part of the wonderful opener right here. Then I've got Blizzard 4, Blizzard, Blizzard 2, and Blizzard 3. If you think of this as kind of a wheel, Blizzard 1, 2, 3, and 4. Blizzard 2 being an AoE ability, Blizzard 4, 3, and 1 being single targets. Don't ask me why they do it that way. That's just the way they do it here, unfortunately. Then on the right hand side we have Flare, Between the Lines, Enochian, Swift Cast, Fire 4, Fire 3, Fire 2, and Fire 1. So you'll notice some kind of comparison to the left side to the right side. So Fire and Blizzard follow the same trajectory. So Blizzard 2, Fire 2, Fire 3, Blizzard 3, Fire 4, Blizzard 4. This is just trying to think that left and right side of the controller and of the brain. Same thing with Flare and Freeze. This being your AoE Blizzard that's from afar, this being Flare, which is an AoE fire ability from afar. Now obviously Sharp Cast and Swift Cast, two different buffs right here. Between the Lines and Enochian on this side, taking the place of Thunder 3 and Thunder 4, these being allowing you to get back to your ley lines, and Enochian, obviously the buff that allows you to cast Fire 4 and Blizzard 4 with that additional 10% at level 70 as a part of that trait. So again, for your fire wheel, your ice wheel, hopefully it makes sense. It feels really comfortable and I really have enjoyed it playing around with that this generation. Playing a Black Mage in Stormblood is immensely easier than it was in Heavensward. Then a couple more abilities. Gotta Run. This is a macro, and I'll show it to you here right now. All this does is it gives me the ability to get out of dodge quickly by picking the target or automatically jumping to my number 2 target, which in this case would be the tank. You can set this to be anything you want, but what this is that instead of having to target somebody and think about it, it's going to automatically move me to a person just to try to get out of the way. Otherwise, it's going to move me to my target if I cannot get to the number 2 position. And in the number 2, so 1 is you, 2, 3, 4, 5. When you're in a party, that's going to be mirrored. So you just think of the position of the person on your party list for that. Not necessarily the best, but whenever I have to use this, I'm never really thinking about where I'm supposed to go. I'm just trying to get out of the way. And as long as obviously my tank is doing the same, I'm going to be in a good position. Erase, a cross-roll ability, obviously removes a detrimental effect and restores HP. Convert, obviously giving MP back to you, and which is really great, especially when you need it. And Transpose, you are able to bounce and keep Enochian up as long as you're able to transpose in between pools or cooldowns. So it's good to have access to it. It's not necessarily as important because using Fire 3 and Blizzard 3 to kind of switch stances as a part of my casting is much more preferred, but this is a great way to maintain that Enochian as well as keep this bar filling up, especially when you're at 70 because you get that foul, which is really good. So obviously you see foul on my cooldown bar, but you don't see it here. That is because it lives on my extended cross hotbar, which is L2 and then R2, and I'll show you how all that's set here in a second. So Sleepy, this is a macro for sleep, and it's again very simple, very easy to follow along with here. Easy to follow along with, but hard to find on my list of things. So basically, I am just going to sleep the target, and then I'm going to tell the party that I have put them to sleep, and I'm going to mark the target with the target to bind 1, letting them know that that target has been put to sleep and not to wake them up. It's important that all that gets communicated in one line because I'm not going to take time to type it, and that is just me on that. Mana Ward, a nice little defensive boost there. Swift Cast, I put it here as well because Foul does have a cast time, and sometimes it's really fun to get that off quickly, so I decided that if I wanted to be able to easily Swift Cast Foul, I could do so here. Triple Cast, Sharp Cast, Ley Lines, and Scathe make up the rest. So Triple Cast being one of the awesomest spells and introduced to the Black Mage this generation. Sharp Cast, another way to get to it easily without having to worry about it if for some reason I want to be able to pop it on while I'm on this screen. Ley Lines. Now I put Scathe here because it's really important that as I'm running around, I want to be able to use the Scathe without having to use the D-pad because I'm using my left thumb to move with the stick, so it's easy to be able to access and move on the fly. So that is my cross hotbar layout and these abilities. So let's talk about settings and how all this is put together. So first things first, let's talk about laying out these actions on your hotbar. You're using a controller, you don't have access to a keyboard and mouse. Go into your actions, and what you want to do is you want to fire up your virtual mouse. You do so by pressing L1 or the left bumper and down on the right stick. This all of a sudden turns your right stick into a virtual mouse where your left trigger and your right trigger are able to be held and dragged. So if I hold left trigger, I can do that, and I can easily place that ability and pick it up and place it off. And the same thing goes, right trigger acts as a right click in this regard. So to get out of virtual mouse mode, it's still left bumper and down on the right stick as a button, and then there you go, and you get out of that mode. That's how all those are placed. Little inconvenient if you don't have a keyboard and mouse, but you're still fully able to do that. All right, so let's jump into character configuration, hotbar settings, and shared. You can see that I only share a couple of hotbars, hotbar 7 and 8 for my cross hotbar, and for my shared hotbars here, 1 through 5 are always going to be exclusive to the job that I'm on. Under the cross, I am in hold mode. I know a lot of people can check out toggle to mix, but it won't necessarily do all that you want it to do. I think a lot of things do require hold. For the W cross hotbar, I have it as always display. Return to the cross hotbar after double cross hotbar input. What this looks like is if I use a transpose, immediately I'm back in my main hotbar. These are usually one-off abilities that when used automatically returns me focus back to the main hotbar as well. position the W cross hotbar separately from the cross hotbar. This is how you see that I had that offset setting and area from that perspective in the beginning. Under custom, you want to enable expanded controls with left trigger and right trigger, and this is where you set which hotbar they pull from. So you can see L trigger and R trigger are my left hotbar number 2 left, and right trigger and left trigger is my 7 right. And if you remember from my sharing, 7 is shared, so sprint, my mounts, my book, my limit break, some targeting options, those are always shared across every job, so they're always the same. It's very handy to have things that you use across everything always in the same spot from muscle memory's perspective. The W cross hotbar with double tap L trigger and double tap R trigger is right here. I have it only enabled for 4 buttons, and I'm using hotbar 3 left and right. So if I jump into hotbar 3, that's how you can set those. Early, when I first got this, you try to set it here. You can't. You actually have to go into your hotbar 3 and drag and drop those in here, or whatever option you end up choosing. Then you have set selection. Whenever my weapon is sheathed, I am only going to be able to select hotbar 1. This is to keep me from getting lost in this, and this is just a matter of preference. So what that looks like, you can see that I can toggle here. Then when my weapon is drawn, it's only going to toggle between the options that I want it to draw. You can always get to it by holding down the right bumper and then specifically picking a hotbar, but this way is that whenever I'm in battle, I'm not going to end up finding myself on 7 or 8, which is very handy and easily to do in the heat of the moment. Same thing applies for PvP. PvP, you can control it independently. Since and with the addition of Stormblood, it is much more convenient, especially within PvP, to control all of those options. And those are my settings. We talked about how you drag items onto the the hotbar 3 here. This is, again, you're never going to click on these. These are just cooldowns to communicate to you different information that you want to see. You can increase it to any size that you want. The elemental gauge right here. And that is it. That is the controller layout guide. Give yourselves some love. I would highly recommend you check out Black Mage. It feels great with a controller. The changes, again, that they made with Stormblood really open this up to be something special and something that shouldn't be ignored. It is actually so much easier at level 70 than, again, it was at 60 in Heaven's Word for me, and that's high praise, because that's one of the complaints that was leveraged against the Black Mage in the previous expansion. But anyway, guys, that pretty much wraps me up for this guide. My name is Brian. Thanks so much for watching this video. Be sure to check out our other controller guides, and let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. I love hearing from you. I love helping you out, and I want to make sure that you can be the best Black Mage on the best way to play, aka a controller, out there in the game. Anyway, thanks again for watching. I hope to see you in my next video, but until then, guys, take care.
Whoa! Thank you so much for watching. There should be another video like over here, or there, or a vlog somewhere around here. And the subscribe button is below with the contact info. Here we go!